The cry tore through the cold night air like a knife through silence. Rancher Ethan Cole jolted upright in his bed, breath catching, heart racing. For a moment he didn't know where he was. The storm outside howled against the wooden walls, rattling the windows like a living thing. Then the sound came again, thin, sharp, trembling with need. The baby. His baby. 5 days old, barely bigger than his 2 hands, and already the center of a grief-stricken world he didn't know how to navigate. Ethan stumbled from the bed, feet hitting the icy floorboards. The cabin was dim, the lantern flickering weakly beside the hearth. He crossed the room and lifted the tiny bundle from the crude wooden crib. The moment she felt his touch, Lydia's wails turned desperate, her little fists trembling beneath the thin quilt. "She's sweetheart, S.H., Ethan whispered, voice cracking. I know. I know you're hungry. Pa's tryin', I'm tryin'." But he wasn't. He was failing. And she knew it better than he did. Her mother, Anna, had been gone 3 days. The fever had taken her so fast he still couldn't believe the earth outside held her now beneath a fresh layer of snow. They hadn't even had time for a proper service, just Ethan, a prayer spoken with numb lips, and the wind carrying his words away. Now he was alone. With a newborn who didn't understand loss, only hunger. He moved through the cabin in frantic circles, as if searching again might change the truth. He checked the shelves, the cupboards, the crates by the wall. Nothing. He had nothing left to give her. Ethan sank into the wooden chair by the fire, Lydia clutched against his chest, her cries echoing through the hollow cabin. Tears burned behind his eyes. "I can mend fences," he whispered bitterly. "Break horses. Drive cattle for 3 days straight. But I can't feed my own child." Outside, snow piled higher against the door. A white wall of winter. Town was 15 miles away through frozen hills, a trip even seasoned riders would avoid in a storm this vicious. He couldn't risk taking Lydia out there. She wouldn't survive the cold. Defeat pressed on him like a weight. The fire popped softly. Lydia's cries softened to desperate whimpers, then rose again in agony. Ethan bowed his head, cradling her close, when suddenly. Knock. A faint, almost fragile tap against the door. He froze. No one came out this way after dark, not in winter, and never during a blizzard. His hand tightened protectively around the baby as he stood. Slowly, cautiously, he lifted the latch and pulled the door open. Wind whipped the room instantly, flinging snow across the floor. Standing in it was Mara Whitfield. Barely 20, cheeks flushed red from the cold, her cloak heavy with snow. She looked small against the fury of the storm, yet her eyes, bright, steady green, held a courage that belonged to someone older. In her arms she carried a small covered pail and a bundle of cloth. "Mr. Cole," she said softly. "I heard the baby cryin'. I thought, maybe I could help." For a moment, Ethan could only stare. It felt like hope itself had appeared on his doorstep. "Come in," he managed. Mara stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Snow clung to her boots and lashes, but she moved with quiet purpose, setting the pail beside the fire. "I brought milk from our cow," she explained, pulling off her gloves. "My mother always said no baby should go hungry. Not while there's kindness left in this world." Ethan swallowed hard. "Mara. I don't know what to say. Just say yes." She warmed the milk carefully over the flames, steam rising in thin curls. The smell of fresh hay and cold air clung to her cloak, strangely comforting. When she finally fed Lydia with a small cloth-wrapped spoon, her movements were gentle, steady, the kind of steadiness born from someone who had cared for young siblings all her life. Lydia quieted almost instantly, her cries melting into tiny breaths. Slowly, her eyelids drooped. She drifted asleep in Mara's arms, peaceful as a spring lamb. Ethan watched in silence, gratitude swelling so fiercely in his chest it hurt. She looks peaceful, he whispered. Mara smiled. She's safe. That's what matters. Mara didn't leave after that night. Not truly. Each morning, despite the cold, despite the distance, she arrived with something new: milk, blankets, herbs, fresh bread, sometimes only a story to make the silence less heavy. She cleaned the cabin, cooked meals Ethan hadn't tasted since before Anna fell ill, and helped mend the crib when one of its legs snapped. She didn't ask for praise or payment. She simply came. As if drawn by something deeper than duty. Ethan began to notice things: the warmth of her laughter, the softness of her humming as she rocked Lydia, the way she always pushed back her hair when she focused on something. He noticed how fiercely she protected the baby, as if Lydia were part of her own heart. Slowly, the shadows in the cabin lifted. Firelight began to feel less like a necessity and more like a welcome glow. Hope crept in like sunlight under a door. One night, with Lydia asleep in a basket between them, Ethan finally spoke. "You didn't have to do all this," he said quietly. "You saved us." Mara shook her head. "I didn't save you, Mr. Cole. You just forgot what living feels like. I only reminded you." He looked at her, then truly looked, not as the neighbor girl he'd known since she was small, but as the woman who had helped him stand when grief had knocked him to the ground. Of course, the town noticed. "That Whitfield girl spendin' too much time with a widower," people whispered. "Ain't proper." When Mara heard, her eyes filled with hurt. "Maybe I should stop coming," she said softly. The panic that shot through Ethan was instant and frightening. "Don't." She blinked, startled by the force in his voice. He stepped closer, gentler now. "You belong here, Mara. More than anyone." Her breath caught. "You've kept us alive," he continued. "You've given Lydia a mother's love. And you've given me something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" she whispered. "Hope." A tear slipped down her cheek. Ethan reached up and brushed it away. She didn't speak, she didn't have to. The quiet smile she gave him said everything. Spring arrived in Red Rock Valley like a promise. Snow melted from the ridges. The creek ran clear and fast. Wildflowers burst across the hillsides in pinks, blues, and golds. The ranch breathed again, cattle healthy, fences repaired, laughter returning to the fields. One morning, Mara stood on the porch holding Lydia against her shoulder. The baby gurgled happily, tiny fingers reaching toward the sunrise painting the sky pale rose. Ethan stepped beside them, coffee mug in hand, watching the two souls who had pulled him back from the edge. For a long time, none of them spoke. They didn't need to. The world around them hummed with life, horses shifting in the corral, the distant cry of a hawk, the soft rush of morning wind through the grass. Finally, Ethan set the coffee down, turning toward her. "I've been thinking, Mara," he said. "About all you've done for us. About what we've become." She turned, green eyes glowing in the warm light. "And what have we become, Ethan?" He looked at her the way a man looks at the thing he thought he'd never have again. "A family," he said simply. Her breath hitched. "You came when the world had taken everything from me. Somehow, you gave it back. You gave Lydia a mother. And you gave me peace." He reached for her hand, rough from ranch work, trembling slightly with fear and hope. "Mara. I don't ever want this house to be without you again. I want you to stay. As my wife." The world fell silent. Even the creek seemed to pause. Mara looked down at Lydia, the tiny girl blinking up with sleepy eyes, then back at Ethan. Her heart beat so loudly she could hear it. "Ethan," she whispered. "I came here to help. I never imagined I'd find my own heart again." He squeezed her hand gently. "Then say yes." A tear slid down her cheek. Then another. Mara smiled, radiant through the shimmer of it all. "Yes," she breathed. I'll stay. Ethan laughed softly, the first real, unburdened laugh since before the fever took Anna. He pulled her close, Lydia nestled safely between them. The baby yawned, as if already sensing her world was whole. The rising sun washed them in gold. The ranch, once silent and cold, now felt like life itself, warm, full, overflowing with promise. A place where love had returned, gentle and sure as spring.